Hi, my name is May Kassem. I am the director and writer of the short film The Neighbours.
Hi, I'm Petra Watzlawik-Li. I was producer and actor in the short Digi film Hold and Secure.
Hi.
Hi, May. My favorite person.
Oh, thank you. We've worked together on, I think, 2 different sets.
Yeah, it's been a few times we've met each other for different things.
A feature film and then another, I think there was another project too. How have you been?
Good.
What did you feel about the word escape?
Well, you know, it's an interesting story because I heard that it was escape, but I didn't actually come up with an idea myself. It was Mark Templin who actually pitched a story at Digi60 at the opening. Okay. And a little later on, I asked him, can I read your script? And he said, sure, because we know each other. And I said, oh, I really like it. And he goes, well, why don't we do it? And so the rest was history.
Okay, that's fun. Yeah. And I heard that you did a Digi60 in 2021, right?
Yes, we did one actually together. And, you know, we learned a lot because we actually went to the director's workshop. Okay. And got feedback from it, and also the feedback from all the judges. And the one that stands out in my mind is for one of the scenes, we created an office, and we got feedback that actually drew people out because it didn't look like a real office. Okay. So when we made the one for 2022, we just really made sure that would happen, that we were in authentic locations. But also for the first one, we only had 2 actors and we had 2 crew. So it's a lot easier logistically as a producer to organize. Yeah. Whereas this one had a bigger crew and I think 5 actors. And so it's a lot harder to organize. Hold and secure. Yeah, hold and secure. Yeah. Yeah. What about you? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, The Neighbours was inspired by real life events.
Yeah, of course.
My neighbors. Yeah. Clearly. But like throughout the process of writing the script, I actually took the longest time to write my script rather than actually the production part. And it was the most challenging thing to write a script for me, rather than directing it. So it took me out of the 30 days, it took me 20 days to write because my neighbors were actually, the story was escalating every now and then. So it was adding more to my creative flow.
You had to
so I'm
adjust
like, I need to know more. And we would never know because my husband and I were living in a condo and we can't really tell where the noise was coming from. So it took us some time to figure out. But yeah, most of my movies, you've seen also The Big Chill, for example. I like to do a lot of awareness. So in The Neighbours, I was talking about wellness checks.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So once you wrote the script, was it you that did the casting and all the organizing? Wow.
Yeah. I've written, directed, produced, did sound, pretty much a lot of things really, because my crew last minute all of them got sick, including me, which was also, I was editing while I was really, really sick.
Oh, wow.
And I remember a lot of people got sick around that time. So I was like, do I do it? Do I not? And even I was talking to May, so I'm like, should I apply for it? And I was super late to also upload it. But then I was like, you know what? As long as it gets screened, I made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that happened with us as well. Yeah. Several people got COVID and actors. Yeah. And so some of them, you can replace them. And then, but then even right up to the day before we were going to film, somebody couldn't come. So yeah, it almost didn't get made many times.
I relate, but how do you think? What do you think about the 60 days? Like, was it enough?
It could be enough. I mean, it was enough, but I know people that do editing and things like that. They can always do more because I know from my own experience with editing, if you have more time, you'll take more time.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? You make it better and better. But did you have any technical issues in terms of filming? What was the hardest part for you?
I think I really liked seeing people's feedback on the film. And especially with comedy, it's very hard because it's sort of like talking about something serious, which is sort of like domestic violence or something of that sort. But integrating it into comedy was really hard. Like for me, I was really focused on the writing part in Digi60 this year. So for me, it was really hard to put in something that's really dramatic in a sense. So it was sort of a dramedy, but at the end of the day, I wanted it to be light for people to absorb better than to have it completely, heart-wrenching. Like you don't want.
Right.
So but I think the most challenging part for me was just doing all the roles.
Yeah.
I wish I had my crew with me. Like I think it would have been way better. Lighting, I was terrible at it. Like when they switch off the light, it's like still lit. I'm like,
yeah, but it worked. I actually just watched it again this morning and was paying attention to that. And I thought, wow, you must have had a fantastic camera. Like it's so clear and so, it really looked good. Yeah.
I was shooting with my iPhone at first. And I think one of the scenes with the dog, Lola.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Lola. She was my favorite.
Is that your dog?
No, it's my neighbor's dog. Not the noisy ones.
Okay.
But like, I think I was shooting with my iPhone at first and I was like, no, I should treat my film better. Maybe I can just borrow someone's camera. And then I did. But then like there was a mix up with some of the footage. So I had to use the iPhone footage, including my Sony as well. So I was like, how's this going to work out?
Well, maybe a trained technical person might notice, but I didn't notice.
Yeah, and Charles Picken, who did sound for me, he actually rescued me. Yeah, he forgot to mention that he came on board like last minute, and he told me, "Why are you shooting on 25 frames per second? That's European." And I'm like, "Does this like explain the flickering lights?" He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh no, I'm still used to Egypt. I'm like, oh, I should be shooting at 24 frames per second. Okay. So I was like, oh, he's like, very European of you. I'm like, I didn't know that. And then it was like all the way in the end. And I'm like, okay, it's done. And like the corridors, the hallways in the condo, like in the building, was all flickering. And I didn't have an explanation up until Charles.
But I didn't notice that.
I had to omit a lot of footage due to that.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience for me to find out. Like,
well, good thing you found out before you submitted then.
In a way, yeah.
I find that doing digi films, like you really learn a lot, right? And that's, I think, from what I understand, that's part of the reason for doing this is to get filmmakers, first-time filmmakers, to get people to just get out there and make things.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I found this year there were a lot of films. I found that it really, like this year, the caliber of films was like pretty high. So if I look at the film we made in 2021 and the one in 2022, there's a pretty big difference in terms of everything. Right. Yeah. In the sophistication of it, in the technical, in the acting, and everything.
Production value.
Yeah. So you really learn, and and placing in the top 5 this year, like I was like, what?
How did you feel about that?
I wasn't able to go because I was sick, and then somebody messaged me, and I'm like, what? How did that happen? Especially comedies.
It was too hilarious.
Right? Usually the films that win or make it up that high are the dramatic ones.
Yeah.
And so this one was actually the way that Mark had originally written it was more dramatic.
Oh.
And then he and the director, Patrick, they played around with it a bit, and it turned out to have that comedic bit at the end.
Yeah.
And, well, I guess throughout, yeah.
Yeah,
and
I found that the ending was, for me, like, the golf, it's just the ball. I just remember the ball. For me, it was just like, I just cracked laughing in the middle of the screening. I'm like, okay, no, that's great. Like, I really loved it. What do you think about, like, filmmakers in Ottawa? Like, you did mention, like, a lot of, this was the biggest festival so far. Do you feel like there's more room for especially different genres and in general? Thinking out loud here.
Yeah, that would probably be a good question for the Digi team. But
that's true.
Because I also not yet this year, but last year I did some acting for Algonquin students. You know, when they have to do their small projects and then their bigger projects, their summer project. So I met a lot of these students then, and a lot of them made digifilms, right? So I think because there's a new program there, so film production, So I think putting all these new filmmakers out into, well, in Ottawa anyway, they're all going to jump on the chance, and maybe that's why there were so many this year as well. And not only for making their own films, but to be crew. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it'll just keep growing.
What was your favorite part of the film?
Well, I love the acting because I'm an actor.
Yeah.
So it was really fun having Patrick directing, because you know, he takes things seriously and he wants to make the best film possible. And all of the actors were superb. You know, we really had a good time. And the challenge we had was that car scene.
Ooh.
And that was because, like, how do we do it? Because the weather's always changing, right? So originally we thought, well, do we do it from inside the car, or do we, you know, like, it was just so many options of how to do it. And then finally they decided to try something new technically and do it in a garage. And so, yeah, it was actually filmed in the garage.
Okay.
The part where we're inside.
Yeah.
And so they went out ahead of time and did some footage on the street, and then they played that around and behind.
Okay.
And then, so yeah, I mean, because it was mostly about the weather, like you can't do it really in pouring rain. Although the one scene where the police car stops us, it did start raining. And
Ooh.
So, but that was the day before or the night before when we filmed.
Yeah.
And then when we did it in the garage, we thought, well, it started raining at one point, so shouldn't there be some rain on the windshield? So we had somebody with a spray bottle putting some rain on the windshield, and I had to turn on the windshield wipers to make it look the same.
Yeah.
So I guess when you're filming outside, there are a lot of variables that you have to, you know, be aware of.
Yeah.
So
I think that was my biggest concern, because it was my first film in Canada to shoot or like direct, and I was like, I should not challenge myself with the weather. I'm going to do it indoor. And I remember, like, throughout writing the script, and like, I think the funniest part for me was while shooting the film, there was a scene with police officers, and then the neighbors who were actually creating the noise, they just passed by and they're like, oh, hey, and we know him. Like, we would never have thought that he's the one that makes all this noise. And we were like, hey, how are you? And we're good, and stuff like that. And then he left. And then another woman passed by and she's like, hey, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? I was like, I'm shooting a film for Digi60. And she's like, oh, I'm an artist and this is so cool. And then, like, yeah, thank you. We're just gonna, you know, continue. So nice meeting you guys. And then, like, they went into the next condo. And then within 2 minutes, someone was, I think Liam was holding the recorder, and then they started screaming so loudly, and we had to like stop the shoot, you know. We're like,
you should have used that as background noise.
Well, well, not really. And my husband and I were trying to do a lot of the noises throughout the film.
Yeah.
But you know, I will keep this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But like for me, I stopped the shoot, and I'm like, how am I gonna continue, because we need to record my actors, like their sound. So one of the police officers, MJ Mario, he's like, you know what? I was a police officer back in the day. Let me go and check on them. So I was like, but they're screaming so loudly. I'm scared that they would. I'm sure it's not them. He's like, it's them.
Wow.
So he walked past by, and like he knocked on the door. Hey, are you guys okay? And then like the girl, the artist, was like, watery, and I'm like, she's like, yeah, we're fine. And I'm like, okay, and we're just checking in on you, because we were just shooting and we heard some noise. They're like, yeah, we're good. So they took my Instagram right around that time, and she came back and she apologized. And then for me, I was like, I had an ethical dilemma. Like, I didn't know it was them up until that point. I didn't know it was my next door neighbors.
So when you make this film public.
So, and I like, there's no clue of who the people are throughout the film. But to have this ethical dilemma, this is a real situation happening, and then you were just writing a film about it, but you never knew who were there, who were they. And now that I found out while I was shooting, I was like, and then I was telling my husband, I was like, what are you gonna do? Like, we know them now. And he's like, well, there's nothing exposing anything. Basically, you're talking about, you know.
Yeah, and you're talking about upstairs, not.
I talked about
we
different.
Shouldn't talk about all this on film then.
Maybe, but like for me,
edit this.
But yeah, I think the funniest part was just like, just finding out who they were, you know. And it was actually my biggest challenge, like, who are these people and what are they going through, or how can I do to help? And like eventually I figured out what the issue is, like, in general. But I felt like I learned a lesson here when I called Wellness Check for the first time in my life. And I was telling them, like, I think there's a lot of noise, and it was my first day of the job, is the next day. I really need to sleep. It's been 4 or 5 hours. He's like, are they okay? I'm like, my Middle Eastern, you know, identity. I'm like, am I okay? And like, I want to sleep. And I'm like, then I called my mama. I'm like, Mama, they were asking, the police was asking if they were okay. Like, that's very nice, you know? I'm like, and all I was worried about is sleeping, like, and like,
yeah.
And then my mom was like, oh, we scream a lot in Egypt. Like, okay. And she's like, that's very nice. I'm like, yeah, I feel like I kind of learned something here. Like, you should be more, you know, very just like humane and understanding, like, whoever's going through something, you know, to be nicer. But
would you do anything? Would you do another Digi film?
I would love to. Yeah, I think I will be way more prepared than last time.
Well, that's what I said. You really learn from them, right?
Yeah. I think quantity for me is, I think film in general is, the more you do, the more you learn, the more you grow into it. And I think the best thing is consistency. What do you think about that? Like, how long have you been working in film?
Yeah, well, I want to be on the actor side.
Yeah,
I want to be acting. I am acting. So the hard part is when you start acting, it's like you don't have experience yet, right?
Yeah.
And then, so to get the experience, you know, you have to act. So I just started, it was actually during COVID when Ottawa Filmmakers was having those weekly film challenges. And I just picked up my phone and started doing you know, the weekly challenge, because we were all in lockdown, right? So it was mostly at home.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I learned how to use the camera. I learned about light. I learned how to edit, which actually is coming really handy as an actor doing self-tapes.
Yeah.
So I definitely try to get involved whenever I can with people. I just like the acting, so I will do volunteer acting if I know people are serious about it.
Yeah.
So if now you've made a film for Digi, I know you've made films before, but would you have any advice for first-time Digi filmmakers?
Yeah, I think just believing in themselves, you know. A lot of people, I feel like they don't take this craft as seriously as we believe somehow, especially growing up in an engineer-dominated family. It's like they somehow mix things with being a hobby or not, and like for me, it's more than a hobby. So it's a purpose. I feel that to tell people's stories or someone's stories. So I think believe in yourself and just trust your gut. Like I think that's the best way to do it, and just do it.
Yeah, just do it. And that's what I was going to say as well is, you know, it can be intimidating because you do see other people's films and you think like, well, how do you do that? How do you do that? But if you're just starting out and you're doing your first Digi film, just do what you love to do and do the best you can.
Yeah,
and that's how you start, right? And then you build on that and you keep
getting better. Just consistency. I feel this is one of the things I tell myself when I work out, like just be consistent. Like it's just, you know, stay on the same track, even if, you know, a lot of us rotate. You know, I write or I direct or I edit or I do a lot of things, but it's still under the same umbrella. So I feel like that's the best way to do it, just to get a taste and glimpse of everyone.
And doing something is better than nothing, right?
100%, yeah. And Ottawa needs us. So I don't know if it's like, should I be saying that? But I feel like they need us to tell other people's stories, and just like something that's relatable and like to
and it's just so amazing when you like we have the theme Escape, and there were like 35 or 40 films, and they're all so different, right?
So different,
just from the one theme. So that's what's cool to see too, you know, how some are documentaries, how some are comedies, how some are drama, how some are horror, you know.
It was versatile. Just one word, versatile. It's
I feel like we're comedy buddies. We'll have to make a film together sometime.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah,
that sounds great. Can be co-writers.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the writing part. I'll leave that for you.
You can act. I can write.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Petra.
Thanks, May.